I have heard it is impossible to prove that there is no God, as an argument against my insistence of proof for a God. And admittedly, it's not possible, but only because it is impossible to prove that there is something that shows no tangible signs of existence, i.e. cannot be seen, touched or heard, and defies all scientific logic, can actually be proven to exist by scientific means. In the same way as it is impossible to disprove that the fairy at the bottom of my garden created us and will banish to hell those who do not believe in it. It is, however, possible to categorically disprove several myths that are quoted by Muslims, particularly in terms of the age and the origin of man, earth and universe, though this is far too complicated to go into here. Religionists will gleefully point to the first cause and ask, who created the universe? Yet fail to answer the same question when put to them as to the creator of God. If a magical God has been around for eternity, then couldn't we say the same about a magical universe? Nevertheless, in respect to proving and disproving, the burden of proof has to be on the believer to prove, not the agnostic atheist to disprove, as this being has never been seen or heard by anyone, nor has science ever demonstrated its presence. There are so many different versions of religion around, how is anyone supposed to know that they are following the right one, or even the right version of that same religion? God could at least have provided us with some real evidence, in which case I would be the first to jump on board, particularly when a lifetime is expected to be devoted to believing and sacrificing for it. Most religions, with the possible exception of Buddhism, say that their God wants to receive devotion by praying, going to places to worship and making day-to-day sacrifices for them. If a being is omnipotent and an important thing to them is to receive unquestioning devotion, then surely there are better ways to go about it. Would he not prefer us to spend that time by helping those that are blind, old, handicapped and less fortunate than ourselves, rather than spending that entire time in servitude towards his already almightiness on a prayer mat? A good way to prove if whether Allah occasionally answers prayers would be to check to see if Muslims have a higher cancer survival rate than atheists. Muslim cancer sufferers would pray more to a monotheistic God than any atheists would, and thus as a whole be more likely to have their prayers answered and survive than a kafir would. I am sure it would be fairly easy to prove this by comparing the cancer survival statistics of a largely atheist nation, the largest being Sweden, which is 80% irreligious, or others even like Denmark, Russia or Switzerland, versus any Muslim nation. This would prove that prayers do not work, or Allah does not listen, or care, or exist. Take your pick. Surely such a God would be more concerned with how we live our lives and want us to treasure the little time we have been given. At the end of the day, as a parent, I do not expect, nor do I want, my kids to spend the rest of their lives thanking me for the sacrifices I've made for them, nor do I expect a greater being, which is infinitely kinder than myself, to do so. Existentialism and humanism are worth looking at, but generally speaking, if you have any spare emotional and intellectual energy, then I think it's best devoted to our children or those in need, and not any possible fairy tale. I too would desperately like to believe in an afterlife so I could see people who I loved and have passed away, but wanting it to be true does not make it true. I have heard, just read the Quran, it's a beautiful book that will provide you with all the answers, so many times. I did so, but this was not the case with me. If I'm honest, I found it repetitive and uninspiring, and that it just provoked more questions and doubts. The way it oversimplified often very complex issues, its general aggressive tone, its forthrightness, the way it pigeonholed, were all hallmarks of what some might even go as far to argue as being written by an uncivilized male human being, not by any superior being. Here are some statistics I found regarding the content of the Quran, and although I appreciate it's not an exact science, I can corroborate as being broadly similar to what I found when I read it. It appears to me that the book just wants to railroad its message into people's thoughts and belief patterns, and when this code of life is followed, it is unsurprising to many non-believers why Muslims are where they are today. I just wonder how many Muslims would convert to Islam based on its merits had they been born into the religion. My personal belief is that I should try my best to lead a good life and not to treat others in a way that I would not expect to be treated myself. It's the golden rule. Then the rewards will not only be available to me by whatever, if anything, is out there, but during my lifetime also. I have found it leads to a richer existence, as the rules you follow are those that you think are right, and not prescribed by some randomly gathered parchment scribblings from the 7th century. And I will leave the religion to all those people who wish to follow it. A true religion would be faultless and immediately awe-inspiring, as it would be put together by an all-knowing, all-seeing creator. This one, sadly, has missed the mark by a long way for me.